Okay, let's get busy here. We've got a lot to do in the next 2 hours. We're going to take another look at one of the most crucial, painful, outrageous, horrific issues on the planet right now, and that is the plight of nearly 4 million whites trapped, and they are trapped, amongst 40 million blacks in South Africa. We need to get those people out, as many as who want to leave. They are legitimate refugees. They're facing death, and not normal death. They're facing the most horrific death, perpetrated by people who have, this is science, it's not just me, IQs of in the 60s generally. There are some exceptions, of course. It's a fact. It just is a fact. The IQs of Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, in the 60s is pretty much it. And you cannot operate on an intelligent, advanced level in organized life on this planet in first or second world status with that kind of an IQ as a mass. It doesn't happen. Things degenerate. When look what happened in South Africa after apartheid was dumped. Yeah, I know all the arguments. I get it. But apartheid was necessary to hold those people in a functional group, a huge hive, to get them to act and behave in an organized first world. And it was a first world country. It's not anymore. It's a jungle down there. And it's regressing and deconstructing incredibly fast. We're putting pressure on the government in South Africa and Malema and some of the others, the activists down there. And what we're doing is concentrating on the problem down there on this program. I've got 5 or 6 stories up today about the grief going on down there. Life and death. True genocide. True refugees in need of being saved. Mr. Trump, where are you? I don't remember one word from the White House on this, and I think we were about the first media outlet to really begin to talk about this, and I did it 15 plus years ago. Now we're back on it because it's only getting worse. The calls for the extermination, the slaughter of all whites are there. Malema has been calling for that for quite some time. You can see the stories and headlines. They're right there. Back with us this first hour and the second hour as well is Karin Smith, formerly of South Africa, an attorney. She is now an American citizen and trying her best to come to some kind of a point where people in Washington or the UN will take this seriously. She has worked so hard on this and has gotten really relatively little accomplished, which is sad. Karin, thank you for being here. Welcome back.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. Leigh is online, and we could put her on while we try and get Skype, because I think he may have a problem with his internet right now.
All right. We can do that. Just before we jump in there, let me just read the titles of the stories I put up today, and I'm trying to keep up with this. And we've got another contact down there who's been on the program as well, trying to help from South Africa. In fact, while he was on last time, he was getting threats not to talk to Rense anymore, right on his computer, right during the program. So they're listening right now. They're paying very close attention. Here are some stories. 3,000 horrific murders of South African white farmers, their families, by rape and torture since apartheid ended. There's been a virtual news blackout on it in South Africa and much of the Western world. In fact, most all the Western world. That's one story. You'll find 5 in a group. South African president leads singing of Shoot the White Farmer. It is a song of sorts. The EFF party leader Malema, as I mentioned, sings Shoot the White Farmer. Malema now calling for a slaughter of whites, but he wants to hold off a little bit, I guess, for political reasons. Maybe something we're doing here is having an effect on that. And then there's a documentary on South African white genocide. Remember, the war on whites is not an exclusive issue in South Africa. It certainly extends to our Western Christian civilization all the way up and down and across the Atlantic to Europe, what's left of Europe. All right. Karin, if you'd like to bring Leigh on, you're certainly welcome to do that. If she's standing by, we'll go ahead and bring her on.
Hang on a minute. Let me add her. If you'll give me 2 seconds.
Sure, you got 2. You got 4 seconds. You got as much as you need. Leigh Oxley is her name, Leighoxley, and she is, I guess, in South Africa somewhere.
Yes, she's in South Africa near the near Pretoria, and she works in the white camps every single day of her life.
All right. Well, this is going to be tragic, but I want to hear it.
Yeah, these are things that people have heard about, but they don't know the drastic details of it. It's awful what is happening there. And Leigh has been working in those camps for 4 years now. She does it every single day of her life. And she is an absolute hero. She won't tell you that, but I'm telling you that. She is an incredible lady who works incredibly hard, doesn't get a salary. Her husband and herself, I can't add her right now, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's all right. Well, we'll get her in time. But you mentioned white camps.
Yes.
Now, these are basically ghetto slum camps that the whites in South Africa have been forced into through economics, through being fired from their jobs, having their property taken. They've lost everything they have. They have nowhere to go except literally living in these squatters' camps. Tell me more about that.
Leigh, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes,
we have you, Leigh. Very good.
Leigh, you would be the better person to tell about it, but you have to realize that this audience knows that there are camps, but they don't know the story of them. So you're going to have to start at the very beginning and say how you got involved, how many camps there are. Tell the story, particularly of Munseyville, because that is a heart-rending story and people really don't know it.
Very good. Leigh, yes, thank you for being here, Leigh, and we're all listening. This is a very smart audience, so let's tell them.
Thank you, sir. Yes, well, my husband lost his job a few years ago, about 3 years ago. And if it wasn't for family and friends that rallied around in our church, sorry, that came in and supported us and dropped off food, I don't know what would have happened to us. We had so much food, we didn't know what to do. So a lady told us about another family down the road who also was in the same position that we were in. So we packed up a little bit of food in my beaten up old car, and we drove to the lady's house, and I explained to her that they must please not be offended that we are in the same position as what they are in, and they had small little children. And we shared the food with them, and she was in tears. And later that week, she told me about another little family also in the same situation, and it just snowballed from there, because then everybody kept on dropping food, and I kept on distributing. And someone said to me, you know, why don't you open up a Facebook page? And which I did. And the requests for assistance came in on a daily basis, and I was completely shocked. And I investigated why are men not finding employment? Why are they being let go? And then, of course, I got to learn about the BEE laws and these squatter camps, that there was actual squatter camps in South Africa. I visited one, and I was absolutely devastated. I was so appalled. You know, Munseyville, like Karin said, is an informal settlement. These people live on an old landfill, which the municipality...
We call that a dump, Leigh. They live on a dump.
They live on a dump, and they were put there by the government.
So the government rounded up these white families and basically force them to live on a dump.
Yes. What they did was they compacted the soil, and they put a layer of topsoil on it. Well, that didn't help much, because after they put down the corrugated iron shacks, which is only a 4-sided structure and a roof with a door, there is absolutely no floors. It's bare soil. They put them on this old landfill with no toilets, no running water, no electricity, no way of ever planting food, and no assistance from anybody in a black area.
Leigh, Who
Yes.
were these whites? What were they doing before they lost everything and were herded into this concentration camp on a dirty landfill, which is obviously off-gassing things from below, extremely unhealthy? Who were these people? What kind of lives did they lead?
They did work. They are mostly blue collar workers. They work with their hands. It's technicians and car repairmen and
Plumbers,
paralegals.
electricians, car repair. Okay, blue collar. That's what holds a country together. I understand that.
And they lived on a piece of land which they paid rent for. And the municipality decided that they were going to turn it back into a park. It's like a caravan park. And they didn't want them there. So according to the law in South Africa, if you move a certain group of people, you have to give them accommodation. Well, this is the accommodation that the government supplied them. Our organization and several others rushed in and started feeding these people, because now you must know they are unemployed. They couldn't find jobs because now they are even further away from any place of employment. The children are further away from the schools. They cannot plant their own food. We rushed water tanks. We put in cement floors. We went in to go give food and clothing. And in the first week, they had torrential rains that washed away all the topsoil that they put down.
I got it.
And now you have broken bottles, glass, tin, that protrudes from the soil. And there are about 60 to 80 little children, and I mean small children, running around there.
How many people? How many white people are living in this concentration camp?
I would say about close to 200. There was 300, but some of them, it was so bad they started moving out, and blacks started moving in.
Oh, really? So we've seen pictures of black ghetto circumstances before. This is where the whites were. So when the whites left, the blacks took over. I mean, that's what unfortunately many of them live in. So where did these whites go when they left?
Well, some were very fortunate to find employment, but small jobs, and others tried to move away to different provinces in order to get employment. So, yes, we have around close to 200 white people in this camp, but yes, it's bursting at the seams. And it's really heartbreaking. Those corrugated iron shacks.
Yeah, I
are
understand.
So hot in the summer. We live in Africa.
This is intolerable, Leigh. Hold on just a second. 200 people. Mr. Trump, President Trump, what is wrong with you sending an airplane down there to pick these people up and bring them out? One 747, one 777. You could bring them all out. Legitimate refugees whose lives are in danger. What's wrong with this country? These are real refugees, not George Soros troops. This is not an unarmed invasion of sub-Saharan black Africans and Middle Eastern Muslims. These are people truly in need. Go ahead, Leigh. Sorry, it just gets me real angry.
But no, you need to explain that that's one of the better camps.
Yes, that's only one camp. There's an estimate that there's around 480 of these camps, but they are in different areas, and they are different in so many ways. Some are on privately owned land. So I have to go to the owner of this land and be very graceful with him in order for him to allow me to enter his property to help the people.
Is this a black?
No.
These would be white owners who like.
He's a foreigner from Germany.
Okay, all right.
I'm just taking one example.
I understand. I understand.
Then you have people living in a bush on the side of the road. The police come, they confiscate their tents. There's nowhere for us to go with them. They confiscate their tents. They take their pots and pans. They take the food.
No.
If they they don't pay them. So then we have to quickly get tents and bedding and sleeping bags and food stuff together and go and drop it off. Then there are shelters. The children are huddled into one room and one parent tries and looks after the children. It's not always possible.
Right.
But you see many mums and dads on the side of the road begging with their little children. It's heartbreaking. And then people say they don't want to work. It's not true. It's because they cannot work. It's because they are denied employment.
Sure.
These BEE laws are racist. Our people are not being employed. Once again, we heard this week.
All right, let's
hardworking Christian.
Okay, good. Go
Christian
ahead.
folks that want work. So yes, it's.
Let me ask Leigh. Let me ask you another question, and I'm concerned that the South African government will interfere with our connection with you and drop you, which they can do. So let's hope that they let you continue to talk. What we need to find out here is the children of these families, are they allowed into any schools, or are they simply shut out of society and forced to live as beggars?
In South Africa, it is illegal to have your children not in school. So most children do go to school, but they are shunned upon because you have to have uniform, you have to have your books that your parents have to buy, you have to have the proper attire and everything that goes with going to school. And plus you have to pay for your schooling. And if you do not, the children gets put in front of the class and says, these are the children whose parents do not pay their school fees.
Now, these classes are mixed race?
Yes, sir.
All right. So they put the whites down in front of the black students and mock them.
Yes, sir.
All right. The unhealthy conditions in which these people are being forced to live. No showers, no toilets, and they're still supposed to, they have to go to school. The psychological damage. What kind of medical assistance is available for these people?
None. If you cannot afford a private medical aid, you cannot take your children to a government hospital. And the reason for that is you wait days. Sometimes you can wait up to a week to have your child seen to. The staff at the hospitals are so lazy. They don't care about the children. The conditions in the hospitals are terrible. You have to take your own blanket, your own pillow. Your family has to bring you food while you wait to see a doctor. And you are so very lucky if you do see a doctor. Most of the time it's just a nurse.
Are these mixed race? Are these mixed race hospitals as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Our doctors are not from South Africa. Hardly any from South Africa. They are from Cuba and India and those places. So it's difficult to understand the doctor, even if he does speak to you, because
I can understand what you're saying. How do you feel, Leigh, when you hear that Germany, Sweden, the United States are taking in these so-called Syrian refugees who come from the Democratic Republic of Congo? They come from Somalia, Sudan, Eritrea. They also come from the Middle East, all different countries, Afghanistan, all over the Middle East. But they call them Syrian refugees. They bring them into America, for example. The first thing they do is put them on lifelong Social Security payments. Then they give them free housing, free food, free medical, free schools, free cars, free aid in any way they want for as long as they want it. How do you look at that, and how do you feel when you hear stories about this kind of behavior that this government, this country of ours, has stooped to engage in? How do you feel?
It's devastating to us because we feel that we are a forgotten white minority on the tip end of Africa. And
I understand. Hold on, Leigh. I've got a pause on that note, and I want all of you to think about that. What is wrong with this government? These people that are being brought in here will never assimilate into the American way of life, our culture, our heritage, our political realities. They come here with one prime directive, and that is our destruction. And yet this government right now continues to bring these people in through the so-called United Nations refugee program. It is beyond despicable. This government gives your money away to people who hate your guts and want you dead. And yet here are these people in South Africa who would come here and do anything to help make their lives better and our lives better as well. We'll be right back in a minute. Okay, and we're back talking to Karin Smith and Leigh Oxley about the tragedy in South Africa. Read the stories and headlines. I've got 5 of them up there. The first one is especially fascinating and depressing and outrageous. When you think about what we're giving these people that come over here, and the story I ran today about the underground network of female genital mutilation that is going on in this country by these people who belong to a cult, not a religion, a cult called Islam. It should make you angry as hell. And then when you think about these whites who are now in South Africa, and for anyone listening who is saying, well, they deserve what they get for apartheid, you shouldn't be listening to this program because you're not an honorable person. The issue in South Africa is an issue of humanity. And we have for how long sent relief to Africans? How many charity organizations are there? We have tried to help those black people forever. How many have tried to help the whites? We need to do that. Karin, any comment at this point? Then we're going to go back to Leigh.
I just think that Leigh should tell you actually how many camps there are, how many people there are, how few charities there are, and why we can't help these people.
All right. Leigh, go ahead if you can still hear me all right.
Well, our estimate, we are about 4.3 million white South Africans in South Africa. It's said now that over 20% is unemployed. That would make it about 1 million that are suffering, and I'm talking about the whites only. So we are not getting any government aid. We are not being sponsored by governments overseas because we feel that they feel that it's politically incorrect to help the white minority in South Africa. Most people, like you said, say it's our just deserve, that we deserve that our children should die of hunger and poverty. But our children were born in a free and fair country. But we are looking at them starving. We are seeing mothers on the side of the road begging for food for their babies. Our husbands are not finding employment.
No, this has got to be dealt with by this country's government. And if there's one person out there listening who knows someone in Congress or in the Senate, we need a bill introduced. We need co-sponsors of the bill. We need to force this to a vote in the House and the Senate, that in an emergency like this, we must deal with it. We can't sit back and wait for the United Nations to take any action. This is a national priority issue of humanity. We consider ourselves to be a very enlightened and benevolent people. Americans have always been generous. We need to help these people. They have been told through many channels that they are going to be slaughtered. There's going to be a mass genocide down there. Leigh, go ahead.
We are already being slaughtered. We've lost over 3,000 farmers. There's not a day that goes by that we don't hear of a home invasion, where children are being mutilated and tortured for hours on end. Just last week, Karin knows about this. Just last week, we went and picked up our daughter and her fiance. We were traveling on a road to our place of residence, and we saw a black BMW parked on the side of the road with another vehicle behind it. As we passed these two vehicles, they pulled in behind us, and the BMW went past in front of us, started braking, and the other vehicle went onto the incoming lane, and they tried to run us over. In the army when he was a young chap, I don't know what would have happened to us. We were in so much fear. You cannot leave your property without scouting around first to see whether it's safe. You cannot go back to your house. If your dogs don't come, you know that there's a problem. Do not get out of your vehicle. We have to
Leigh, excuse me. Leigh, in other words, when you leave and when you return home, you have to be absolutely on guard, 100%. You've got to take every possible precaution. And if your dogs, and you all have dogs, watchdogs, if your dogs don't come when you come home, you know something's wrong. That's what you just said.
Yes, sir.
This is no way to live life. You know, we have a big country here, Leigh, and 15 years ago or longer when I was starting to try to bring awareness of this subject, and it's gotten so much worse, I said, we have so much land in this country. Let's carve off a small piece of one of the states. Federal government owns 60-70% of every state land as it is. Give these people a small piece of land with water and power and watch what they do with it. They will be self-sufficient, I'm willing to bet, within a year and a half, 2 years at the very most. They just need a chance. They don't want lifetime Social Security. They don't want a free ride. They don't want a free car, free house. These people are willing to work. They have what's called dignity, right? There's no dignity in coming over to this country and taking free everything and bitching and asking for more and then raping people and beating people up. That's not dignified human behavior. It's subhuman behavior. We have to get these people out of there, which is not very easy. I do know, Leigh, that it is a problem to get your exit papers to leave South Africa. It's not easy to do. This is going to have to be done at some level, direct intervention by the administration here. I don't know how it could work. Do you have any ideas on how it might work politically, how we could get these people out of there?
So the only solution that I would have is that governments get involved, because we've tried for many years. Several organizations have tried to go to the United Nations. Everybody's looking at the United Nations for answers, and if they do not acknowledge that there is a slow genocide going on in South Africa, then nobody cares. So we need governments to actually intervene, like they have intervened in dropping off thousands and thousands of tons of donations and AIDS drugs, which there are practically none in the clinics. You see people in rows waiting for ARV drugs, and there's nothing to be had. There's nothing to give out. But yet the USA and England and all those countries are sponsoring the ARV drugs. The corruption in South Africa is so rife. Just a simple thing of going to a supermarket. You are treated like a second-class citizen. So many times you are told in your face, you will go back to the sea where you came from.
In other words, you're going to die.
Yes, sir.
The only way to get out of South Africa, according to many of the blacks, and they tell the whites this, you're going to go back into the ocean. In other words, you're going to die. What's it going to take, Leigh? Are we going to have to see video on the nightly news here of dozens of bodies of whites hacked to death in the cities when the genocide starts? Is that what it's going to take? Or can we get something done first? I'm not optimistic, to be honest with you. I don't know what the hell to do. I started doing this over 15 years ago, and I've gotten nowhere. I didn't do much for a long time. There wasn't much to report because of the news blackout. But this country, without whites, what is its future without whites, South Africa? What's going to happen?
We're going to turn into a second Zimbabwe because if you take at our beautiful cities that have turned now into the biggest prostitute, child trafficking, drug-inhabited slums, we do not go into town at all because it is so dangerous. Whether you are hijacked or mugged or stabbed, we are too scared, and we cannot carry arms. We've been disarmed many years ago.
Right. So Leigh, let me ask you a question. Hold on. What happens when people are disarmed? These anti-gun people in this country don't seem to get it. So what happens when guns are taken away from law-abiding citizens? This is what happens.
What happens is they come into your house, they butcher and murder and steal and rob your family blind, and you cannot defend yourself. And you are left to watch your children die and your wife being raped, gang raped, repeatedly for hours on end. And if they are finished and they can't carry on anymore, they take a tire iron and try and finish the job.
Oh my God. This is not racist. This is fact. These people are not normal humanity. They're down below. The IQ is the IQ is the IQ. You can't fake it. The difference between an intelligent person of any color with an IQ of 100 or more and these people is like black and white. Pardon the pun.
I mean, you've got the doctors. They have lowered the standards for doctors. If you are black, you only have to pass your surgical course with 35%.
That's it? 35%. That's failing.
35%. That's failing. If you are Indian, then you have to pass the course with 75%. If you are white, you have to pass the course with 85% or above in order to pass. There are different pass rates for different races in South Africa.
Oh, that's called racism, isn't it, Leigh?
Exactly. But because we are white and...
Karin, they may have cut her off.
Oh, dear.
That's the South African government. They can do it.
I don't. There you go. She's back.
Oh, there she is. Okay, good.
While we're on, can you give me a number in chat here for Skulk to call in on? His internet is not working very well.
Todd, would you email Karin the number for Skulk to phone in. He'll call long distance. Todd will send that to you, Karin. You can send it on to Skulk. Leigh,
Great,
are you still? Leigh, are you there? Can you hear me, Leigh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. We lost you when you mentioned that it was racism, and we mentioned that 85% pass rate for whites or more, 35% for blacks to become a doctor. That's all they have to score on their exams. This is a joke.
This is reality, the reality we're living in. Our children cannot go and study because they have to take in more blacks than whites. They have
Sure.
to take in more Indians than whites. So only a very, very small percentage of whites are training to be doctors, and they are leaving to go overseas because they cannot find work here.
I'm sure. What about diseases in the country? We were watching, we called it XDR, extra drug resistant tuberculosis, and there was something even worse that was talked about. And South Africa used to have a chain of wonderful tuberculosis facilities. It was a disease that they were dealing with. Now it's out of control. What kind of diseases are you seeing the general black population dealing with now? Are there trends? Are there new outbreaks of things? What's going on?
Well, AIDS is rampant. AIDS in the schools is horrifying. And like you said, TB is also, they have drug-resistant TB that they are trying to deal with, but that it's like they are fighting.
All right, that's interference. We're going to have to get her to repeat when we get her back on. So they
aren't any drugs.
All right, Leigh, can you hear me, Leigh? No, she can't.
Which is a
all right, when we get her back
drug that they smoke.
Okay. All right, Leigh, can you hear me, Leigh?
Can you hear?
All right, we lost everything you said from when you began to talk about how AIDS was common in the schools. Now, this is indicative of children who have no restraint and they're engaging in sexual activity, promiscuity at a very young age. Certainly some of it is passed through raping. But I know quite a bit about HIV and AIDS, and it is something that apparently has mutated in Africa, much of sub-Saharan Africa, to a point that it can be managed with a proper regimen of drugs. What you were saying something about the drugs that they were being abused or something. What do these people with AIDS get done for them by the medical establishment in South Africa?
Well, I mean, the like I said just now when you lost me, the drugs are being smoked. They are using it for recreational uses. So they are stolen from the clinics and used for all kinds of other things except for the patients that really do need it. We do have resistant TB. It is rampant in South Africa. So yes, the diseases are bad.
Leigh, are people down there dying from AIDS commonly now, or is it something that if they do take their drugs rather than smoke them, they can live with it? Of course, when you live with AIDS, all you end up doing is spreading it. You spread it further. So, how many are dying? Is it the death rate used to be fairly substantial for AIDS down there?
I think at this moment in time, I'm not too sure about the death rate because it's not really spoken about.
Yes, of course.
We used to have regular updates on the death rates in AIDS, but now AIDS has become such a common disease that people have been desensitized from AIDS. Nobody cares really in South Africa. Nobody really talks. They do have AIDS days and rallies now and again, but we hardly ever hear of the amount of deaths that are taking place.
How wide is AIDS in the white community? How widespread? How common?
Not as much as in the black community. You don't hear of AIDS as much in the white community. It's more prominent in the black community in South Africa.
Okay. When a white person is diagnosed with AIDS, HIV/AIDS, do they get medications?
They do, but like I said, you have to stand in line. So you have the luck of the draw whether you do get at that specific day and time when you do go to the clinic.
I see.
It's about whether that clinic has enough meds to service that community.
Right. All right. Much of this, I think, is probably coming in through international organizations, NGOs, bringing these drugs in.
Yes.
For this has been the way it's been going on for a long time. Are you getting, Leigh, death threats for the wonderful work you're doing and trying to doing, and others like you?
Yes, sir. And that is very worrying to my family. I'm seen as a racist because I choose to help my own people. Right. I would never stop anybody from going into the camps. In fact, we did try that. We did go into a black squatter camp right in the beginning and say, well, let's be fair and let's help everybody, not just one specific race. Well, we got beaten up. The bakkie was stolen, which is our truck. They stole all the donations, and so my volunteers refused to go into those areas because
of course. Yeah, of course.
Why would you go and help people that you are in danger?
Of course.
Of losing your life or helping someone. So we decided we're going to rather focus on our own people, and I'm seen as a racist, and so I don't go anywhere alone, nowhere on my own. My husband is always on my side, or either my brother or some man that is with us in order to keep me safe.
Well, we're out of time this hour, Leigh, and I want to tell you, I really admire the good work you're doing. I admire your strength, your bravery, and all the people down there. And I just want you to tell them that there are people in this country who are aware of what's going on there and who want very much to help to get these people out of there where they can have a normal chance at life. That's all we're asking. Tell them, please.
Please, go to our Facebook page, South African Family Relief, on a daily basis. We need your help. We need you to write to your Congress and get involved, because if we do not get outside help, we are done for. We are losing lives on a daily basis.
Understand. What is the Facebook page again, please?
South African Family Relief. They can also go to our website, www.safrpsa.org, and go and see what we do and donate. You know, we are in winter. We need food desperately. There are so many children that are going hungry, and we just don't have enough.
All right, Leigh, I hope to talk to you again. If there's anything I can do, just let Karin know you need to come back on the program to update us. We'll do that anytime at all. There are great Americans here in this country who care. Don't forget that. Thank you, Leigh. Okay, here we are back with Karin Smith. Karin, we have our special guest who was supposed to be with us at First Hour. We do have him now. You want to go ahead and introduce him, please?
Yes, our guest tonight is Skalk van der Merwe. He's a lawyer, he's an activist, he's a proud South African patriot. His family have been in South Africa since the very, very beginning, at least 400 years. And I'm very proud to call him my friend. He's one of the founders of the NKP, a white political party. And his main thrust is for self-determination for the Boers, the Afrikaners, and white people in general in South Africa. Good evening, Skalk.
Good evening, Karin, and thank you very much for having me.
Hi, Skalk. My name is Jeff. I'm the radio host. I'm very glad to have you on. I started to cover the issue in South Africa at least 15, 16, 17 years ago with the murders of the farm families back then, and things have only gotten worse. So I'm glad to have you on. Thank you for being here.
It's my great honor and pleasure to be with you. Thank you, Jeff.
The situation down there is so grim now. Now, you have a political party, but I wouldn't imagine that the political party is allowed much influence or impact given the status quo down there. It's a group, it's an organization, and I'm very glad to hear that you have one. But what can you honestly, realistically do with a political party of whites in South Africa, given these people on the other side are singing, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer"?
Thank you, Jeff. When we started out with NKP, the National Conservative Party of South Africa, those were the exact questions that we had to answer to ourselves. The Constitution of South Africa that comes from 94, it was later on amended in 96, is designed in such a way that the racial majority in South Africa will always be in power. It's based on proportional voting. In other words, that party that control the highest percentage of votes will necessarily always have power in this country. And it's by design that you will always have a black majority now running the country, whereas previously we had a totally different system. So you're quite right in when you ask me these questions, they were indeed what we had to go and investigate when we started up with the party. A party itself, even if we win seats in Parliament, and I will come back to that in a moment, that is not really going to drive the cause of whites in South Africa that much further. But for the international community, you need to be part of the system, and not system now in a bad way, but you simply have to be part of any of the formal system inside your country.
I understand. Yes.
That is why we went to the IEC. That's the independent, supposedly independent electoral commission in South Africa, and we registered as a proper party with a constitution, etc. Everything that they prescribed should be in place, and we took it from there. So we are a fully fledged political party, and our focus is on white rights. And as Karin has correctly pointed out, our main drive, our main focus is self-determination. Just coming back to the practical situation in Parliament or in politics in South Africa, you have the African Nationalist Congress. That's still the ANC. That's still by far the biggest party in South Africa.
Right.
Through the years, it started to lose some support, but it's still huge. It still commands at least half of the votes in the country. They are in an alliance at this point in time, and they've always been with the South African Communist Party. And the South African Communist Party is actually the brains of the operation. You will find that the top 6 ANC leaders are all fully fledged communists, and they are card-carrying members of the SACP. And then, of course, also they stand in alliance with COSATU. Now, COSATU is a confederation of trade unions of South Africa, mostly black. They are white members, but they are, of course, in a very small minority. But the trade union business in South Africa, most of the big trade unions form part of this confederation. So you have what would we call the classic tripartite alliance of SACP, or the Communist Party being the brains of the operation, a more leftist type of not so much a socialist or Communist Party, more just a socialist party being the ANC, and then of course organized labor that forms this alliance. So the ANC is still by far the most dominant party in South Africa. Then you had splinter groups that came off from the ANC. They at one stage the more right wing, if you want to call that, of the parties tried to split, and they formed COPE. COPE unfortunately didn't fly that high. They still have a few members in parliament now. But the more worrying thing is that the more even extreme left wing of the ANC at some stage broke away, and they formed the EFF. And the EFF is a fully fledged 1960s type of revolutionary and black nationalist type of organizations. Think Black Panther, and you basically have the same in the EFF. So that's basically black politics. White politics, you have the Democratic Alliance, which at this stage garner more than 70% of the white vote. But the average person voting in South Africa is not voting for policy. It's simply voting for something big enough to take on the ANC. And unfortunately, the DA has positioned itself over the years as a social democrat party. So they are also actually left. They're just not as far left as the ANC and their alliance.
It doesn't. Hold on, Schalk. It doesn't make sense to me that any white person who is politically oriented would even waste time being a liberal in South Africa. What are they going to gain? They've been marked for death. Don't they get the picture?
They don't. They simply don't. You still have diehard DA members that will simply not, stand away from a failed policy of liberalism in South Africa. In recent times, we even had very liberal or very leftist type of journalists and commentators writing and giving out articles to say, but liberalism has failed in South Africa. In fact, the black majority sees liberals as even lower than us supposed conservatives and right-wingers, because they also see it as part of this big global neoliberal conspiracy that's trying to overthrow Africa. So the average person voting DA at this point in time is either, and I'm going to be very harsh about this, too stupid to know what's going on, or that person is so entrenched in their liberal ideas of certain things that they will never leave that organization.
Lost cause. Gone.
You see it in the United States. You see the failed policies of Obama. You see that the pedophile rings around the Democratic Party, and still people vote for them in their masses.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's how people's minds work about politics. If you always vote the DA, you're always going to vote DA in South Africa. Now, fortunately, you had the Trump that opened up things a little bit there, but it's exactly the same on your side as this side. Beyond the DA, we still have the Freedom Front Plus. Now, the Freedom Front Plus was traditionally where more conservative Afrikaners would find their political home. But unfortunately, through the years, it's 25 years later, and that was our frustration as conservatives. Through 5 years, they've basically done nothing. They've sat in Parliament for 25 years now. Now and then they will give a little speech. They're very silent on the whole issue of farm murders. They are very silent on the whole issue of white genocide. In fact, if you speak to them directly about white genocide, they will say, but it's racist to say that. Now,
that's crazy. That sounds completely crazy to me. It doesn't make any sense.
It is. It's what you would probably term, if I can say that, also on conservatives. We brand them as the same as conservatives on your side. Supposed conservatives trying to be liberal and still be part of the system. And it's a very reason they want to be part of the system, because the system is paying them. If you sit in Parliament today, the salary package that you receive there is quite a substantial amount of money. It's about $1 million to $1.5 million. That's about $100,000. I would suppose that you receive in salary. So there's the party itself also get a lot of money out of the IEC, out of the government systems, etc. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to
Yes.
change the course here if I can.
If-
Are there any black groups, politically or otherwise organized, who understand that South Africa and blacks and whites can get along, and in point of fact, without whites, they're doomed. They're going to be third world for the rest of their lives, or worse. Are there any blacks who understand that whites are essential for running a modern city, a modern country?
I think they are, but they are so small in number that at this point in time they are simply being drowned in the voices of the anti-whites, the anti-white rhetoric. I can give you an example. COPE, that I spoke to you about earlier.
Yes.
The leader of COPE is Mr. Terry Lekota. Now, I know Terry Lekota personally. He's a fine gentleman. You can have a long conversation with him.
Right.
He came out in Parliament about a year ago, and he thrashed the white, or the rhetoric about white murders and these things, and he told his compatriots, his black compatriots in Parliament. He was brave enough to do that, and he said to them exactly what you said. Now we can't be without the whites. They have this capital, both mental capital and physical capital, and cash in the bank, and all these things.
Yes, it's the mental capital that I'm glad to hear him mentioning. Yes, it's true. This is not an issue of racism. It's an issue of genetics and IQ and basic capability. You've been there for 500 years, for God's sakes. There were no blacks when the Europeans migrated down there in the beginning.
No, they were.
It's a lie. People keep saying, well, the blacks were down there and the whites took them, kicked them out, took their land. Not true.
No, that is definitely not true. And myself and Karin covered that topic in different radio programs now over the years.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to go into that at this very point in time.
No, I think we're pretty well. This audience gets it. We're very smart here. This is a very good audience you're talking to.
I was told that, so we can skip the basics and the 101. So other groups in South Africa that for instance is certainly not in a competition or animosity against the whites would be the Inkatha Freedom Party. Now they are a Zulu-based party, mostly around the royal house of the Zulus. They've always been traditionally the allies of the white people, but once again they are so small that actually only in Natal, in KwaZulu-Natal, they have any real influence. In organized business, now fortunately organized business through the years has retained a lot of very conservative white people, but on the other hand also, I would think a class of black people that understand that business is actually what keeps South Africa running, because nothing else is keeping South Africa running except its economy at this point in time. Politics have failed, and infrastructure has failed, and policing. The state has failed. It's basically only economy that's keeping it going. So inside organized business, at least, you have a lot of very good relations between black and white.
Okay.
But the overall picture, especially on the political front, is dire. It's dire. The rhetoric of white monopoly capital and of whites stealing land, of whites being the devils and whites being the cockroaches, and that it's easy. It's easy political rhetoric for everybody at this point in time to use. Just simply throw everything that's bad is always contributed to apartheid, but apartheid has died more than 3 decades ago. Now, if you sit with a failed municipal system of service delivery today, how on earth can you blame a system of 30 years back? They inherited a perfect system, the new South African government. It was there, but 30 years has lapsed. But somehow it's still the problem of the old system. It simply doesn't make sense. But it's rhetoric. It's easy, it's simple rhetoric to gain political points.
Okay. Now, when I was first talking about this on this program 15, 18 years ago, I brought up an idea, and I think time has passed. I think back then it might have had a chance, but there was some talk, and I really thought it was logical and pragmatic, that the black majority government there carve off a piece of South Africa, a small piece, big enough to allow 4 million whites to inhabit, and give it to them as their homeland. In other words, it's a white enclave in South Africa. It be a different name, whatever. And then you'd be able to defend yourself, raise crops, create light industry, do all of these things. Is there any talk of that kind of a solution at this point in time anymore? There was some talk in the past.
You see, that's where the magic of the DA once again ruined all the chances for whites in South Africa, because at that point in time, I know exactly which phase during the South African history that you're speaking about. There were lots of talk about Afrikaner homeland, the Volksstaat. It would have been called the Volksstaat.
Right.
And the idea really gained a lot of momentum. But then the DA came and the DA bought into the whole Rainbow Nation idea, and everybody was still gliding around about Nelson Mandela being an icon and a god and all these things that we know today. He was certainly not. So everybody started to buy into this DA narrative of let's build a strong coalition. South Africa, the new South Africa will work out. We're always going to be part of it, all these things. So they started to buy in politically to that narrative, and they started to move away from the Volksstaat idea, the Volksstaat idea. And for a very long time, the whole issue of self-determination, Afrikaner Boer self-determination, unfortunately, did not come to the fore. About 4 or 5 years ago, I think most conservative whites started to realize the system has broken down to a point that we can't repair it anymore. We must exit. And that realization started to spread amongst a lot of the older conservative types, but also amongst the young people. We have a lot of this understanding the problem that we are facing here. They want to live in South Africa. They don't want to emigrate to Australia. But we must find some solution. So talk of self-determination is definitely gaining momentum again. That is where NKP comes from. Our main policy is still self-determination for Afrikaners. We base it on cultural rights. We base it on historical rights, not so much on race, because race is an issue you simply don't touch in South Africa. So we rather try to make it a cultural thing. Fortunately, we also have the colored people, the Khoisan people, those people that's descended from the original nations living, the First Nations living in South Africa. They also want it. You have the Griqua people; they are also colored people. They also want it. Down in the Eastern Cape, a lot of the Tembu people and even some of the Xhosa people themselves also want self-determination.
Uh-huh.
When you start moving a little bit up the coast, you will find that the Zulus are pressing very hard for self-determination relating to KwaZulu-Natal. You find in Northern Province, we visited a king of the Vangona people. Now, the Vangonas is the royal house of the Venda people. They also want self-determination, because I think, just give me a moment. I get the idea that it's not only the Afrikaners that's realizing the system is breaking. I think a lot of people around South Africa is failing that. So I suppose that in a couple of years, you're going to have South Africa breaking up anyway. And into that void, into that vacuum that's going to be created, we must already now put those structures into place that the day that happens, that we can definitely then secure our part of South Africa. What? You must remember something. Afrikaners and Boers, for me, it's the same thing. Other people try to make a distinction. Afrikaners for me is a Boer. As a people, we have the greatest historical, legal, economic, cultural, in any way, the greatest claim to South Africa above all other people. We were there first. We are the original nation of South Africa. The Khoisan people were there, but they were scattered as small nomadic groups all over the place. We were the first people who built states there. We were the first people to build cities there. We built the economy. So we have extremely strong rights relating to what is recognized in the international world, the right to self-determination. We have extremely strong rights that at this point in time, people must just start to realize we can go and claim those rights. But they're still caught up in this narrative of whites having to have some guilt in South Africa and apartheid guilt and all these things. So they're simply too scared, I think, and sometimes just simply too stupid to stand up and simply go and claim those rights. Because it's not something that we still have to fight for. Those rights are there. It's even in our own constitution, section 235, says that we have a right to self-determination. But people still don't understand the weapon and the might that we have, so that we can actually exercise those rights.
All right, here's another question. Now we're getting somehow a feedback of my voice. Maybe it'll go away. Coming up on a break, but let me put the question out there now. And I don't want you to give away anything. I'm sure there are really very few secrets. It's hard to keep a secret in this day and age, but are there plans, contingency plans, that if a mass genocide begins, that there will be some organized resistance from whites to try to protect somehow the community at large? And I would hope that the answer is yes. I don't want any details, but I mean, there must be. South African whites are very creative, very, very smart people. They're not going to let this happen without a hell of a fight, I wouldn't think. Am I correct?
The simple answer is yes. You will find scattered all over the place. People belonging to community policing forums, being reservists of the police force itself, moving within the system, not against the system.
Right.
Within the system. So they organize within the system.
Okay.
But even beyond that, you also have other organizations definitely doing that. It's not on as grand a scale that I personally would have liked, but there are definitely backup plans if it really goes bad.
Okay, all right, stand by, Skulk, for a couple of minutes. We'll come right back. I have to pause, and we will continue with Skulk and Karin in just a few minutes. Okay, now we're back talking about South Africa and the incredible difficulties down there, which are only going to get worse. The issue of the president of the country singing a song about killing all the whites, and I guess Julius Malema, another one, doing the same thing. Young people pick that up. These are their icons, their role models. Are you beginning to see this more and getting reports, Skulk, on the streets of people, white people being told, your day is almost up, you're going to die soon, we're coming after you, etc.? Are we to that point now?
Yes, definitely. Not only even on the streets. You must remember that South Africans have taken to social media tremendously. You would imagine this supposed third world country, we don't even have TVs, but you will be amazed of how advanced relating to social media, etc. we are in South Africa. And if you go onto the news pages of even mainstream media in South Africa, the old, even traditional Afrikaans and more conservative type of publications, you will see the amount of hatred. It will amaze you.
So the hate is just it's endemic to the entire populace, the black populace, the way of life. It's never going to get better. It's only going to get catastrophically worse. That's what I'm hearing.
It's definitely if you see the amount and the intensity, it's definitely increasing. There's no two ways about it. You can go for yourself. Your listeners can go for self to the South African media. The moment that anything is placed in social media relating to a supposed race incident, because the media is very very fast to show any white on black incident. Exactly the same as on your side. You will find incredible amounts of comments and threats and blatant racism and whites being called pink pigs and things like that, and you will
pink
be killed.
Pigs. Okay.
Yes, we are not white. We are pink.
Pink. I see.
According to many blacks in South Africa. If you go to the streets, you would definitely find that also. We had a couple of very serious incidents during last week in Stellenbosch, for instance, which is one of the more liberal towns in South Africa. It's a university city. Racial incidents there. If you go to the farm murders and the white murders, there's this extreme hatred that's being portrayed there. The way that the killing is done, for instance.
I know it's we've spent time on that, Skalk. Just so you know, it's absolutely horrible. It's this is not something humankind does. It's that ugly. It's that bad.
It's incredibly bad. Sometimes you have this idea of the Rwandan genocide of people walking in the street and being mowed down by AK-47s, and then the people on the outside in the international community says, well, that's very bad. That happens. If these guys realize what's going on in South Africa on a daily basis, because there's farm murders now nearly every day, nearly every second day. It's done in the most
nearly every day. I just want to get this clear. Nearly every day there are farm murders. Yes. And that's the whole family usually.
Yeah, they wipe out the family easily. So all those things, we're living in this warped reality of going on with our daily lives every day, because we have to. We still have to make a living, and nobody's going to look after us if we don't care for ourselves. But we're surrounded by all this extreme violence. Extreme. In the general populace in South Africa, since 1994, we've had more than 500,000 murders. 500,000 people murdered since 1994. Those are like the statistics of war that we experience in South Africa.
That's 23 years, yeah.
That's 23 years, yeah. If you go into a township, you will find that even people living in the township are so scared that they won't go at night. Black people killing off black people, because the rage and the violence in the black areas is just as bad. But now,
blacks, from what we understand over here, studying African history at all, blacks have always killed each other, butchered each other. No problem. That's what they do.
Exactly. It's that liberal mindset of somehow, because for the liberal, actually, and they are the real racists. No? For them, actually, a black is not even human. That's what they do. So we don't report about it. We leave them. But if you go into the black areas, and I know people in the black areas, if you go into those areas, you will find the shock and horror of what's going on there. Now, that's totally foreign to our way of life, lives as white citizens in the country. But that has unfortunately also come over to ourselves now, but with this additional problem of ideological and political stirring around this whole issue of white people. The issue of land, for instance. On a daily basis, you have these discussions in the media about the landlessness of the black people, and for some reason this is causing their poverty, etc., etc. People don't live on the land anymore. Nearly 90% of Africa are living in towns and cities. They don't want to live on the land. They're never going to leave the cities to go in. But it's a political plaything, and it's very... In the South African context, it's a very hot potato, and it's easy political gain for those parties trying to stir up the masses and get the votes and all those things. So it's just simply a turmoil at this point in time, a turmoil of different influences and different reasons and vested interests and so forth.
All right. The idea of getting out of South Africa is not as easy as it is in many other countries. We've talked about that in the program, on the program in the past. I'm told now that if you don't have papers, don't even try to get any to leave. They're not going to give them to you. They do not want white flight. They don't want white capital, whether it's physical capital, financial, or mental capital. They don't want it to leave. So they're trying to force these people to stay. In other words, whites are trapped to a large and substantial degree by the black government in South Africa. Is that a fair statement?
I think it is a fair statement, and it comes from both sides. On the one hand, you have the international community not recognizing the real problem of South Africa at this point in time, not seeing that we are even more threatened than the Christians in Iraq or any other persecuted group on earth. They still see us as the so-called perpetrators of apartheid. So from the outside world, we're definitely not getting any help. In fact, our visas, South African visas, especially in Europe, even have even more tight control over them. So you can't simply go and travel there, etc. Anymore. Australia is basically closing down South African immigration there. Canada, all these countries that people used to go to. So it comes from that side. But then definitely from the black government side also. The laws are being tightened up to keep citizens inside the country. And those outside, they are now even going to be taxed, which basically makes it, you're quite stupid if you leave the country now and you believe that you're going to have a very nice living on the other side, because the South African government is still going to tax you. I don't know how they're going to enforce that, but that's what they want to do. So yeah, we are actually trapped administratively. We are trapped inside South Africa.
Right.
Beyond that issue, there's two more things that you need to remember. We're not speaking of 10,000 or 100,000 people even that's in danger. We're speaking of 4.5 million people. Now, how do you move 4.5 million people? It's a practical problem. How do you do that? So even if we could go, it would become a huge logistical and operational problem of getting all those people out. And I mean, they don't let us go willy-nilly. So there's going to be blood on the streets if something like that happens. But the second point you must remember is that my family have been here before black people. The Van der Merwe people came here in 1666, about 6 years after, 14 years after Van Riebeeck landed here.
Wow.
At that point in time, there were no black people in South Africa. I'm more South African, I'm more African than African.
It's true. It's true. Yes, of course.
The Zulu nation was only formed in the 1820s. At that point in time, we've been living, the Afrikaner people, the Van der Merwes, my family have been living here for 1.5 centuries. Just think for yourself for one moment. When the Zulu nation was created by Shaka Zulu, we were already here for 1.5 centuries.
Amazing.
So why should we leave? I'm an Afrikaner. My name is derived from the continent. I'm an Afrikaner. I call myself that. My family have always called themselves Afrikaners, Boers. It's our country. Now, why should we leave? I know it sounds stubborn, but you must also remember there's a huge emotional bond keeping ourselves here. It's a blood bond.
Well, of course. You've been there longer than Americans have been here in North America. Our blood and our sweat is what brought prosperity to South Africa, what brought freedom. We fought the first proper colonial war against the British Empire. It's our blood that's in this land. So how can we leave? We are here. We are Afrikaners. So even if we can get the administrative side correct, and for some strange reason we get the government to say, okay, 4.5 million whites, you can leave now. You can go. And we actually have a host nation saying, okay, we will take 4.5 million refugees. You will find that a huge amount of these people will simply say, we're not prepared to leave. It's our home. It's where we always been. So it becomes a much bigger problem as simply a few colonial people in Rhodesia, for instance, because Rhodesia, it's about the 1890s that the first time there were settlements of white people there. Right.
It's a much scenario of white Rhodesians simply moving to South Africa, I think they were about 200,000. But South Africa, you have a totally different scenario of a nation that was created there. Afrikaners have been there for 3.5 centuries at least. We've been here. And we're about 2.5 million, 2.8 million Afrikaners, and then the other 2 million approximately are from the other languages.
Mm-hmm.
It's a total, not only just one simple problem.
Right. What are your options right now, Skalk? What are your options? What can we do at this point?
What we can do inside the countries, Afrikaners,
both of us, you over there and us over here. What can be done to help? We need a bridge out for those who want to leave. How do we get that done?
You can build a bridge to get those that want to leave. And for those that do not want to leave, that have a good reason why they don't want to leave.
Say that one more time, please. It was a little...
And it's not something strange that we are asking. It's an international trend to give all minorities self-determination on your side. That is what you must push for.
Right.
Push the government into a position where they say, okay, Afrikaners, that's fine. We will mark off Pretoria, and we will mark off the eastern part of Johannesburg, and we will mark off the Free State, and we'll mark off certain areas in the Southern Cape, and all those places that we have big concentrates of Afrikaners. You go and govern yourselves there. That's basically the only way that you can save what is still left of the white people in South Africa. Those want to leave.
All right, Karin, we're getting a little fuzzy on the connection with Skalk. Step in here if you would, Karin, and give us your thoughts on what's been discussed here.
Oh, wow. I'm so glad you had these two guests on, because it's so much more powerful. People speaking from on the ground, boots on the ground, day to day in South Africa. I can sit here and tell you whatever I've read for the day, but these people live there. Leigh is dealing with trying to keep the people in the camps alive, and Skalk is very bravely trying to get the people to join hands, vote for one party, give the whites some voices in parliament, and get them a place to live on their own. So the two of them are doing the most valuable things that you can think of in South Africa. We have to keep these people in the camps alive. We cannot let them die of dysentery, cholera, starvation. We cannot let the children not be educated. We have to keep those people alive until such time as we find an answer for them. So I can't think of two better people to speak at the same time, because they're coming at it from different sides, but actually doing the things that matter, not just talking about it.
Yes.
And that is why I admire these two so very, very much. They're not keyboard cowboys. They walk the walk. They talk the talk every single moment of their lives. And for me, they are heroes, because they are doing it at great danger to themselves. Every day, they are targets. Every day they must know that something bad can happen to them. And it's just absolutely amazing to me that there are people like that willing to take up that heavy, heavy load and fight for their people. It's amazing.
Well, I'm very, very happy to be able to have you on the program and to give these people voice. Skalk, are you still there?
I'm still here, thank you.
Okay,
Jeff.
We have a couple minutes left. Let's get a final comment from you, and then we'll go back to Karin. And I want to thank you right now for taking time to speak to a very large worldwide audience and to share what's going on down there. You've done it very articulately, and it's a great credit to you and the resistance movement down there, the self-preservation movement, and the strength that you people have. Tell us in a final summation what we need to keep in mind.
What we have to keep in mind, you still have 4.5 million whites in South Africa. They're a proper nation. We are still here. We can't leave to tomorrow. Even if we will, it's practically at this point in time, it's impossible. So we will have to start to think about the alternatives of how to save the white people in South Africa. And if you save the white people in South Africa, yes, the knock on, you save South Africa. And if you save South Africa, you basically save the whole southern part of Africa. Eh? So you're not only doing the thing that you need to do to the white people and saving them, you're actually doing a much greater job if you do that.
Is there, Skulk, excuse me, we don't have a lot of time. Is there any chance of a neighboring country making room for the whites in South Africa who need and want to leave, like Botswana? I don't know anything about it. I'm just guessing. Is there any geographical option that you might have?
There is indeed. You will find that South African farmers and business people are going north at a huge pace. But we're not speaking of millions of people. We're speaking of tens of thousands of people. And for instance, a country like Mozambique is taking them with open arms because they've realized it's a ex-communist country, Mozambique. They realize black communism doesn't work. Full stop. That is why they are importing white capital.
Okay.
So we have that option, but it's a small option. We definitely have. But that is why I'm saying if you take out the white capital out of South Africa, you basically collapse the whole continent. And who's going to fill that void? The Chinese. So there's a direct link to Americans supporting us for them to still be relevant in 50 years' time on a geopolitical spectrum. Because otherwise, it's simply going to be the Chinese. The Chinese overrunning Africa.
For a selfishly motivated American government, it certainly behooves them to take care of or help to try to take care of the problem there, to stabilize it so the Chinese don't sweep it away. Are you seeing Chinese down there physically? Do you see them?
Yes, every little town has Chinese. There's a huge amount of Chinese flowing in. Russians. You must remember that there's a direct link between Jacob Zuma and Putin. They were both in the security mechanisms of their respective organizations during the 80s. They know one another personally. So in other words, there's Russian influence in South Africa through the ANC. There's Chinese coming in huge numbers.
I see.
So even for you're quite right. Even for a very selfish reason, the government of the US will have to.
Yes. Why wait 20 years when the Chinese are thoroughly entrenched? You never get them out. This that's very interesting. All right. Well, let's hope that maybe the State Department gets wind of this program, and I'm sure they've already figured it out. But they have a lot to gain by forcing Zuma to get real and stop the murder of South African whites. I don't know that he will, because these people are just...
Yes, how I see it. If you take Israel, the state of Israel, simply as being a huge military base for the Americans in the Middle East, why can't we have a small Afrikaner Israel in Africa, which is basically a military base for the Americans? I'm a deal maker, so that's why I'm throwing this.
Well, that's a deal that ought to appeal to the Pentagon, I would think.
You can come and park your F-35s on our land here, and you can dominate Africa. So it starts to make sense the moment if you start to think practically about the advantages to everybody here.
Very good. All right, Skulk, thank you for being here. We will talk again as we continue to follow this. Thank you, and be safe, and keep up the wonderful work.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Jeff, and all of the best there. Thanks, Karin.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure, Skulk. Speak to you tomorrow.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, Karin, let's wrap this up. We have about 2 minutes. So there are geopolitical angles. This is what I was trying to get at earlier on, that might somehow make sense to somebody in the black community, the black government down there. They can make deals. Skulk just made that clear. The Americans certainly want a chance to compete with the Chinese for all the resources in Africa. This would be something that might make, I don't want to use the word peace yet, but some kind of an accommodation could be made to stop these murders. I don't know.
Jeff, the thing that's getting up my nose at the moment is that last week or 10 days ago, the U.S. did a combined military exercise with the South African Defense Force. So the Americans are perfectly aware of what's going on in South Africa.
They would have to be.
They're aware of the Russian and the Chinese connections, and they're still allowing this to happen. It's making me crazy.
Well, it's pretty disgusting, but that's our government over here, as you know, at this time. It's not functioning well to represent the people. It's representing Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, and it's Zionist overlords from the City of London and Israel. That's where we are right now. Trump is surrounded by neocon, warmongers, and generals, military. And they want wars because the military-industrial complex feeds on war and death, and it's pretty damn hungry right now. So we'll have to wait and see. Thank you, Karin, very much for arranging this, and stay in touch. We'll do it again.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.